Welcome to this year's Blueprint for Education Change Summit. I'm so glad to be here. I'm Richard Tagle. I'm the President and Executive Director of E3 Alliance for the past 8 months now. So, thank you. Thank you so much. This is an event that we are hosting, but this is actually your event. You're the one who's going to be doing all the work for the rest of the day. So eat up. You're going to need the energy. You're going to need the fuel. This is also my first summit as your E3 Alliance president, but I have been in those seats before. In fact, I have participated in the summit for 5 years. Lovely music. I'm always afraid to follow children with musical instruments, you know. But I've been in your seat before and, you know, chatted with my friends, partook of breakfast and, you know, did whatever I was going to be doing while Susan Dawson was doing her welcome remarks. So as Susan Dawson would say it, karma's a bitch. Right? Anyway, all right. So this is a summit with a theme of collective action, community, and storytelling. So throughout the day, you will be hearing many, many stories, and including that of our plenary speaker, Carl Settles, who is the founder and executive director of E4 Youth, a great organization, and Carl is really one of the people here in Austin that I really admire for the work and mission that he's passionate about. So looking forward to that. There's also a story. A long, long time ago, once upon a time, our development team found sponsors for this summit, right? So I want to welcome and thank you, our sponsors for this summit, especially HEB, helping here. Thank you once again for partnering with us. We also have A+ Federal Credit Union. If you have those plastic bags, great for football games. So make sure that when you go to the next game, please show off your bags proudly. Show your support for the team and for A+ Federal Credit Union. We also want to thank TCEA for hosting us in this facility, very, very spacious facility, and ACC Tech for capturing a lot of the moments that we will be experiencing here. I also want to thank PEJ Events for catering. So the lovely fuel that you will be needing throughout the day is provided by PEJ Events, and Susser Bank was the one sponsoring our catered meals. So thank you so much for all of our sponsors for supporting this summit. It's a very important summit because we do have very serious dialogues, but I do have one other story to tell you, and this involves share. Yes, share. What does share have got to do with this work, right? Well, Cher and I share a lot of things in common. Cher was born in 1946, and she's very public about that. My dad was born in 1946. Cher married Sonny Bono. I'm trying to look like Sonny Bono. Those of you who know me pre-mustache would know that. Cher is coming out with a retrospective hits from the past 6 decades. And E3 is coming out with a new strategy and vision pretty soon that really galvanizes everything that we have learned in the past 2 decades. Our data work, our blueprint work, our transformation work, our policy work, all of that combining to really lift our schools and really support the collective work that is present in this room. We are really becoming a backbone of your work and supporting you all the way from data to action to policy. That is the commitment that E3 Alliance has been making to this community, to this region for the past 2 decades, and it's a commitment that I am very excited about to lead and to work along with the team to make sure that each and every one of you in this room feel part of this collective action, right? There's also something that Cher reminds me of, because she's 78 years old, and 78 years ago, this country faced similar challenges that we are facing now. In 1946, we were just getting over a war, and everybody was focused on that victory, right? On putting everything we have in our power to do that, to overcome it, overcome evil. Economy was booming primarily because of the investments in war. 1946 came, and everybody was coming back. US American public education system had a challenge of a teacher shortage because teachers were taking higher paying jobs because of post-war investment. There were 75,000 children who couldn't go to school every day because there were no teachers in the classroom. They were working somewhere else, right? There was the trauma of young people coming back after fighting for 3 years, coming back and saying, what do I do now, right? And the US government basically said, we are gonna put so much investment in recapturing our vigor, in making sure that there's a new life for everybody who is coming back, that there was new life that people can look forward to, including the GI Bill. The GI Bill allowed a lot of our young soldiers to go to college, which challenged our institutions back then because there were all these people going to college. And our colleges and universities basically were overwhelmed, right? So 78 years later, after we proved that if the government invested in education, we could become one of the most powerful countries in the world. 78 years later, we are asking the question, do we need to invest in public education? The debates are boggling my mind about dismantling institutions of public education that has allowed us to get to the point where we can influence every corner of this globe. And yet we are still asking that question, right? We are in a perfect storm right now, not just about what's happening politically, but also what's happening in our local communities. We are still struggling from the end of ESSER funds, to make sure that we are addressing the loss that a lot of our young people have experienced in learning. We are in a cultural kind of dilemma between book bans and this and that and eating pets somewhere in this country. No more comment on that. But it's a perfect storm where these kinds of dialogues become very, very important. Our young people are not looking up from their phones because, for the most part, they don't see anybody else, right? We are asking them to put your phones down, but are there supports in place that we have provided or are providing that allows them to forget that there are phones in the first place? Are there relationships outside of them holding the phones in their hands? Are there other hands that they can hold? We cannot tell them, stop doing that, without presenting an alternative that is more fruitful, that is more fulfilling, that is more about them rather than about us. We're always in conversations about what do we want to do. And this is, I've talked to a lot of people about this. I've turned off a lot of people by saying this, but it is my honest thinking. We are always saying we should be student-centered. but how many of our conversations really center the students as opposed to what we prefer to do? Let's be honest, right? We always work the way we prefer to do it because it's easier. There are certain things and projects that we say no to because that's hard work. Well, for the past 78 years, our young people have been hard at work just to make sure that they're on a path to success. And for the most part, especially our students of color, our marginalized students, students with disabilities, students with special needs, those pathways are not very clear because it is hard work. It is very hard work to pave that path, right? But the choice is we either do that hard work or it becomes harder down the road for a lot of these young people, right? The investment that we're making in terms of time, our talent and thought, what do we put into that so that all these other students that we talk about a lot, but not at the center of the dialogue, but there's always at the last part of our dialogue to say, is it benefiting them? Well, we've got to put them at the first part of the sentence every time we do something. And a clear example is public funding for education, right? We're always talking about, what do we need to do? What's missing? I don't think in the past 11 years that I've been an Austin resident, have we ever been in a dialogue where we talk about what does it really take? What do we define as quality public education in this community? Did we ever have that dialogue? Because we always start with, there's a 6,100 base allotment in the state of Texas for students. And we start there. So the center of our conversations really is about how much money do I have to spend? State starts with 6,100. Then there's additions. There's a formula, right? Up to the point wherein we're actually, doubling that, where there are certain districts that could spend up to $14,000 per student. Some districts have $8,000 per student. But that's the center of our dialogue, not students. Let's be honest about that, right? But if we define what it really look like when schools are safe and caring environments, when our teachers have the equipment and technology and skills that they need to be able to really teach the way they were born to teach, because they are amazing people on earth. If principals can have the vision of being not just administrative building managers, but community liaisons that actually advocate resources from the community to bring into the school, if there are after-school programs and summer programs that are so dynamic that learning loss is no longer an issue for us, if there are mentors and coaches that are available to each and every student so that they can have the options available to them and not just one pathway, that this is what you take, because this is the only pathway that's really in front of you. When we, in fact, tell ourselves, the world is your oyster. And if the world is your oyster, there should be a vast ocean that you should be looking at instead of this little creek that you need to cross. 78 years ago, there were studies done on what it takes to be a good quality teacher. 78 years ago, we started studies on the impact of equity leading up to Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, leading up to Civil Rights Act, 1964. Title IX was passed, 1972. Project Head Start was started in 1965. The research on after-school programs and its impact started in 1974 onwards to the point of in 1996, it was really proven that high-quality after-school and summer programs have an impact, positive impact on academic achievement. Yet every year, we have to convince Congress to put in money for 21st century community learning centers, which funds after school and summer programs. What the fuck is that about? '90s, there was Goals 2000, Bill Clinton, and I remember this because I was a lobbyist. We passed CHIP, right? I was one of the lobbyists for the Conference of Mayors who actually went district to district asking schools, can we use you as enrollment sites to sign up children for insurance programs, right? That was my homework when we were working for, when we took on this, the CHIP Act. I believe it was passed in 1994. Memory's hazy because of my trauma in doing that. Senator Kennedy and Senator Orrin Hatch, very first time Republicans and Democrats worked together to make sure that we are children-centered. So it is possible. So we passed CHIP. 11 million children all around the country suddenly got health insurance coverage. Right? So all of these episodes tell me that we can do something together. Despite of this perfect storm that we are experiencing, there are two things for sure are needed to make sure that we overcome this. First, by working together. Nobody can do this alone. I don't care how wonderful your organization is. E4, you are great, but you cannot do this alone, right? And by investing together. Let's stop asking ourselves, how much money do I have? And let's start asking ourselves, how much money do our young people really need to thrive? And advocate for that, right? There's a panel on the affordable childcare now, which is an important county commission vote that's going to be out in the ballots in November. And this is really the first time, because I testified for it, this is really the first time where it was spelled out what is needed for our children and how much it's going to take. It's still not enough, you know, and none of the propositions is not enough. But the question for us is, what would it take? It's not about the amount, but what would it take? Because I believe Central Texas region has the resources, has the talent, has the passion, has the will. This is a room of very powerful people. We can move heaven and earth, right? It's a matter of whether we want to do it or not. So we will use today to have these kinds of conversations about what does it really take to move heaven and earth. It's just Central Texas. It's, you know, we're only talking about 400,000 students in our public schools. Dallas has over 1 million. New York has 1.4 million. Los Angeles has 900,000. We can certainly do something for 400,000 children. All of these studies also point out to three important truths, and this is true for the past 78 years. Three things, if you're taking down notes. First, in order for a school to be lifted, in order for our learning institutions to improve, three groups need to be supported and served: students, families, educators. At the same time, simultaneous, high-quality fashion in a coordinated manner. No silver bullet, no one audience, right? If you are an organization working with students, you need to work with organizations working with families and organizations working with educators. Pull resources together, serve all those constituents. Because serving one and focusing on one and touting outcomes for one leaves two other legs of the stool unaddressed, and you don't want to sit on that stool, right? A second truth, schools cannot do it alone. So we really need to have schools working with other important institutions, homes, faith-based institutions, you know, libraries, museums. Everywhere in Central Texas ought to be a learning opportunity place. I remember growing up, I would dread going to the grocery store with my mom because we were going to do math lessons. She would say, "You want peanut butter?" I said, "Yes, of course." "That jar, that's 30% off. What's the price?" "Oh, can I just have jelly?" Right? But every one of these places that you go into and that children are welcome should be places where they feel like I can learn something here. It is a place of interest to me because people here look out after me, right? The third thing, so 3 groups need to be supported and served. Schools cannot do it alone. It will take time. Time, joint investments, and trust. Time, we are always so impatient. Funders in the room, my apologies. I've been a funder before. 1-year grants, 3-year grants are great. But grants that allow for an initiative to take course, and usually it's more than just 3 years. There is a life cycle to how an initiative develops its outcomes, 7 years. The first 2 years is about trust and relationship building, because whenever you start something, people disengage and ask, "Why the hell am I what the hell are you introducing me to?" Right? There's always that, a new thing again, right? I've been teaching for 15 years, there's always a new thing every 2 years, right? So there's a level of disengagement at the beginning of every project. Do I really want to do this? Is it really going to do what it's supposed to do? There's a dip, right? From year 1, there's a dip. After year 2, people realize, oh, they really mean this. They really are genuinely interested in my well-being, right? So you actually see re-engagement. But that only goes up to baseline. And after 2 years, funders look at that and say, nothing happened. So let's think of another investment. But if you actually stick to it, that point back up of re-engagement is actually very crucial, because now you've grabbed their attention, you have their trust, you can really do something together now, right? And so that 3rd year is just a quiver of the needle because you're doing something. So years 4 and 5 really are your proof points. That 1, this is not by accident. It was not just because you were lucky that everything lined up, right? That it was an intentional impact and outcome generated from a relationship built over time. And that relationship generated engagement that stuck true to the intention of the project. And then years 6 and 7 really are your years of talking about how do we make this sustainable. Now that we have the proof point, who else can we go to support this work? Or because it's producing proof points, how do we make this part of what we do as a standard operating procedure? So 7 years, takes time. That's a capital. Investment is a capital. Nothing can happen without public-private joint engagement, right? There's not enough philanthropic money to cover all of our 400,000, and there's not enough public money that allows voters to be able to support anything like this. So you really need the cooperation of both sectors. And third, and that's an important point, trust. Trust is a sacred capital because it doesn't appreciate. You either trust people or not, right? There's no degree to trust. Like, I trust you slightly. There's no such thing, right? It doesn't appreciate, but it does depreciate. And so when you invest trust, it can only go down, if you see that things are not going the way it was supposed to, right? It can only go down. So trust is one of those capitals that you don't see going up, but if you're not careful, could slowly deplete and depreciate to the point where you cannot move anything, right? So in this room today, we build trust. If this is your first time in the summit, let's create a baseline of that. If you've been attending the summit for past years, let's use the accumulated kind of investment of time and energy and use this day as baseline to see if the needle will actually move up. This is a room of powerful people. Let's use this power to move things here. We at E3 is going to be the people that's holding your ladder so that you can go up, right? So think of E3 as that backbone, right? People tell me, oh, I thought E3 just did data, right, and research. We are actually your backbone for the work that you do. We convene, we facilitate, we use data and turn it into action, and action into policy, policy into the kind of transformation across the board so that you don't have to keep doing the same thing year in, year out. If you are doing that, we're not doing our job. So we are here to tell you, we've got you. Going back to share. Put your hand in mine. There ain't no hill or mountain we cannot climb. I've got you, babe. Thank you so much. Enjoy the summit.